When one mentions the deplorable act of body snatching, it evokes images of the infamous William Burke and William Hare, who killed 16 people for fresh corpses over a period of 10 months in 1828. But with a huge demand for bodies created for the advancement in medicine, they were not the only ones trying to meet that demand, though it often never ended well. Body snatching is the illegal removal of corpses from graves, morgues or other burial sites. The term body snatching most commonly refers to the removal and sale of corpses primarily for the purpose of dissection or autonomy lectures in medical schools. The term was coined primarily regarding cases in the United Kingdom and United States throughout the 17th, 18th and 19th centuries. Before the Autonomy Act of 1832, the only legal supply of corpses for anatomical purposes in the UK were those condemned to death and dissection by the courts. Dissections, the main way doctors aimed to gain understanding, required fresh corpses. Those who were sentenced to dissection by the courts were often guilty of capital crimes such as murder, burglary, rape and arson. However, in 1832, Parliament of the UK passed the Autonomy Act of 1832, which gave doctors and medical students the right to dissect donated bodies for education and research purposes. Although this act was created to stop the illegal trade-off of corpses, it did not provide near enough corpses needed by medical schools annually, which could be up to 500 in number. This led to increased numbers of body snatching in the UK. One grim tale involves Scottish medical student John Weatherly, 24, and Thomas Thompson, 25. Both would find themselves in the dock after stealing the body of a 10-year-old girl named Elizabeth Headley from a Sunderland churchyard. Captain Headley, Elizabeth's father, had not been able to complete the purchase of her grave at the time of her death, and so the young girl had been laid to rest in a temporary plot. Once the sale of the plot was complete, the grave was opened to move Elizabeth into a new resting place, which happened to be on Christmas Day, 1823. But it was found to be empty. The body of a 2-year-old girl buried nearby was also missing. Weatherly and Thompson quickly came under suspicion as they were rumoured to be resurrection men. They were arrested and their lodgings searched. The body of Elizabeth was found packed in straw, ready to be sent to Edinburgh. Several human teeth were also found at the address, these being another very lucrative commodity, as were receipts for boxes like the one Elizabeth was packed in. Thompson pleaded guilty, but Weatherly maintained his innocence. Extraordinarily, both were only sentenced to 3 months' hard labour and fined 6p, though the ghost of Elizabeth haunted both men and drove them to madness. One Sunderland resurrectionist would get his just comeuppance. He had dug up a body, said to be that of a young woman, put it into a sack, fastened a rope around the middle, and carried it to the churchyard wall to drop it over and make his escape. The wall was only about 3 feet high on the inside, but twice as high on the outer side due to a ditch. So when the man had lifted the body onto the copestone and was getting over the wall himself, when the rope somehow slipped over his head and he fell and hung suspended, while his sack, unfortunately for him, fell back towards the churchyard. He was found thus by one of the graveyard watchers going about his rounds. The body snatcher was still alive when he was cut down, but soon afterwards died. His memory still survives among old Sunderland folk as Half-Hanged Jack. In Manchester, February 1824, 2 resurrection men were apprehended with 6 bodies recently unearthed in their possession. The prisoners, who were men of a respectable appearance and good address, were sentenced at the ensuing quarter sessions to a short term of imprisonment. The packages which contained the bodies were directed to different persons in London. There were several methods used in obtaining a corpse. One such was digging down to the head end of the coffin and breaking the top open, using a rope or hook to grab the body by its neck and hoist it out of the coffin. Body snatchers were careful to put any clothing, jewellery and personal belongings back into the coffin before refilling the hole and trying to smooth out the gravesite as much as possible to look undisturbed. What distinguished body snatchers from grave robbing was the practice of returning belongings to the gravesite before moving on. If they had took the personal belongings, it would have meant in heftier fines and prison sentences. The Lancet, a weekly peer-reviewed general medical journal, reported a more complex method in which body snatchers would avoid detection. A manhole-sized square of turf was removed 15 to 20 feet away from the head of the grave, and a tunnel dug to intercept the coffin, which would be about 4 feet down. The end of the coffin would be pulled off and the corpse pulled up through the tunnel. The turf was then replaced, and any relatives watching the grave would not notice the small remote disturbance. The article suggests that the number of empty coffins that have been discovered proves beyond doubt that at this time body snatching was frequent. Body snatching became so prevalent in the UK that it was not unusual for relatives and friends of someone who had just died to watch over the body until burial, and then to keep watch over the grave after burial to stop it being violated. Iron coffins, too, were used frequently, or the graves were protected by a framework of iron bars. With the passing of laws and public outcry, body snatching eventually came to an end, but the memory of its wicked crime lingers on.